Everyone, welcome to another edition of Founder Wisdom Podcast, Not So Far Future edition. Today we have with us Helen Hill. She is the co-founder of Be the Future, founder of Falling Off the Ladder Coaching Business, and also founder of Unlikely Genius, an interesting business that we're going to talk about. Helen, can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about these businesses?
Yeah, sure. So, Unlikely Genius was my first business, and it was like a little side hustle on the side for over a decade, with just earning me a bit of extra money. But after a rough time in employment, I threw myself into self-employment full time with that business and turned it into a learning and content design business. And then, after writing a book about my experiences and having that out, which was called Falling Off the Ladder, that's what's led to the business of the same name, and a podcast and various other things. And I'm just coming up to completing my training to be a business coach next week.
Very
And
nice.
then in the
Well,
meanwhile,
yeah.
I'll go on to
Yeah, let's start with the book and the podcast before we
yeah.
we proceed with these other things. So tell us a bit more about the book first.
Yeah, so like I say, I had a very rough time in employment. I was diagnosed with MS 10 years ago, and then 2 weeks later, they told me I also had advanced degenerative disc disease.
Hmm.
So I was in a lot of pain and had to kind of wrap my head around that and things. But it was something that was very difficult to deal with in the workplace because they can't see any of it. It's very much an invisible illness for me in the way it manifests. It's all to do with my vision and muscle spasms and things like that. So yeah, I had a rough ride and I eventually just got to the point where I thought I wasn't going to handle it anymore because it was affecting my mental health. Pretty much had a breakdown in the middle of the office, and yeah, I went off sick and I handed my notice in and never went back, and was very lucky that within 2 days of handing my notice in, someone contacted me about a contracting role, and that was that. I've not stopped since.
And in the book, like what lessons are in there? Do you have for people facing similar situations?
Yeah, a big part of what I talk about is the fact that despite how people treat you, you are not broken. If you have a disability, it can actually be a superpower. It makes you think in different ways. It makes you very resilient. It can make you creative in the solutions you come up with. So that's a really big thing for me. But also, it's about how you've got to acknowledge the things that have happened in the past, good and bad, before you can move on with your business and really thrive and understand where you want to go and what you want to be. So the book's very much split into three parts: of acknowledge what's gone on, also acknowledge those feelings as you launch yourself into self-employment, of the total excitement and the total fear that there seem to be in equal parts, and it can be a real roller coaster. And then, like I say, you can really look at how you move forward and thrive in that world.
For people suffering from chronic diseases, do you recommend sometimes that they start their own businesses? I told you the story of a guy that had, I think, cerebral palsy, and he went
Mm.
through Mexico to not only have his caregivers cost less, but also the real estate there cost less, and he ended up running his own business from there, making 300K a year. I think he had 125K in costs for his health. So he lived a good life. Do you recommend that? I mean, it's not an easy thing, especially if you have a
Yes.
disease to face at the same time. So what do you recommend that people do if that ever happens?
Yeah, and obviously some people like the security of a guaranteed wage and employment and things as well. But I found that that world was affecting my mental health and stuff so much that I just couldn't have carried on. And yes, it's a total roller coaster. But what I found is that the amount of hospital appointments I have, and my flow of energy, because I get fatigue, I have insomnia, all those things, that it just allows me to work in a way that really works with that. If I've had a really rough night's sleep and I need to stay in bed till 10 o'clock in the morning, I can do that. And I can work till later at night, or I can, hold off a day altogether, or, I can plan ahead for hospital appointments. And I don't have to have that guilt of being made to catch up time, and
Mm.
almost being an inconvenience, because that's how it felt a lot of the time. And I mean, the irony is that I was having weekly hospital appointments when I was in work, because
Yeah.
obviously the stress and everything was making the MS worse, and the pain for my back. Since I've gone self-employment, I now have a hospital appointment once every 6 months. It's been that life-changing for me.
So was it a toxic workplace, or is it like the average ambitious place where you scaled the ladder? Is it like very stressful, or was it particular to the place you were working at? And what do you have to say about toxic workplace cultures?
Yeah, I found a bit of both, I think. There was very much a sort of bullying, toxic manner to 2 places I've worked. I did work in education as well, and they were quite nasty about it, and that was where I was when I was first diagnosed, actually, and this all
Mm,
seemed to start off. But I found it was very much as well a culture of your face had to fit. You really had to be this certain mold of person, and I just wasn't that. And they were trying to tell me that I needed to become that person. I needed to be someone else. I wouldn't be a success as I was. And then I think
mm,
when the health issues hit as well, it just exacerbated that. And I realized I was never going to get anywhere in that company because I was not the right kind of person. And since I've gone self-employed, I've been allowed to be the big daft child I am, and I just wasn't allowed that in that world. I had to be a robot, and
mm.
I couldn't keep it up. So it was partly that whole just workplace culture, but also there were issues within that specific business for sure.
Was it like a testosterone culture in which there was like no emotions and just like achievement and do this, do that, you'll be at 150K next year if you do this? And was it that way, or?
Yeah, I don't think it was so much about the money, but it was about promotions and, if you were moldable into exactly what they wanted, you could
Mm,
quite quickly progress. If you stood up for yourself and had ideas of your own, you couldn't. So yeah, I think it was more like that than a sort of money kind of goal, really.
yeah.
Um,
Think
and
that's a
we're
recipe
told
for
from a young.
failure. Like if someone, I mean, tells you in an org this is how you need to be, and we don't really care about your ideas, I don't think that this kind of organization is gonna go really far. Um, in my opinion, I think you need to hire very smart people, try to work with their strengths. Obviously, if they
Mm,
have weaknesses, you try to work with them on these weaknesses. You don't want to try to change someone, especially if
mm,
it's not their own ideas. And if you let them thrive with their own ideas, you let them do what they want to do and make them think that it's their ideas, that philosophy. Well,
mm.
it's gonna make a real impact. So I think there's also something to be said about these organizations that um, are kind of in the 80s or in the 70s in their mindset. The new
Yeah.
mindset, I guess, is more of hiring, some type of mercenary with a proven record and get out of his way, kind of. But obviously, teach him the culture to be nice and so forth. So, yeah, I think also the fact that you went through this, it kind of shaped you probably as an entrepreneur. Did you get some motivation to start your own business of like, hey, like, yeah, I'm gonna prove them wrong after you were done with that, or?
Massively. I mean, the fact that it had happened more than once as well, and you start to think, oh, well, maybe I'm the problem. And I'm not saying I did everything perfect. I did become an emotional wreck, and I was probably quite hard to handle by the end. But to be beaten round the head and then told be more resilient is not the way to build resilience in someone.
Oh
And I
yeah.
just wanted to get some acknowledgement for the way I was working and working so hard and the ideas and things. And I think I threw myself into when I handed my notice in, I didn't know what I was going to do. It was only because someone approached me those 2 days later that I thought, well, I could do that, and I started that contract and then thought, oh, I like this. I like working for myself. And then a switch had gone, and I was just like, I am not going back to that world. And yeah, it's massively driven me on
I
to
wanna.
talk about these
Oh,
things
sorry.
and to no, it's fine. And just be a success and show I can be.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
super cool. It's a nice story. And I want to say something about grit. Like
Mm,
I know a thing or two about grit, finishing Ironmans and doing a bunch of very difficult things in my life. And well, saying to someone that you need to become gritty is kind of pointless because people get gritty with experiences, you know, so you don't need to add a layer of BS kind of to it, because humans, they get
Yeah.
grittier by living tough experiences, period. Every human
Mm.
have an adaptation mechanism deep inside them, that every time that they live something hard, a layer of toughness will kind of build, just like a muscle grows when you destroy it, and it will rebuild better. So like we have these mechanisms inside us. So yeah, I'm really glad that this played out well for you. So tell us a bit more about first Unlikely Genius, then we'll dive in a bit more into Falling Off the Ladder, and finally Be the Future. So let's start with Unlikely Genius. I heard that you had a knack for learning systems. So tell me a bit more about these.
Yeah, so that's my learning design business where I create online experiences for learners for other businesses. So like at the moment I seem to be doing a lot in the health and well-being space, which is perfect because that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
And also in things like sustainability. So, quite big companies like the NHS and things, I'm creating training for in their organizations for their staff to do. So I've been doing that since the beginning because that's what I used to do in employment, and I work on the full process, which is quite a selling point because not many do. So I do the writing, the design and the build, which is why I've also been very busy because it's quite like I say, a selling point for clients. But yeah, that's what's then led to Falling Off the Ladder with me writing the book, because I joined a writing accountability group and found that it was really cathartic to write about all this stuff, and it helped me move on, and to really vocalize this stuff. It really did help me do that. So once I started that and I started doing some interviews with people, two people had put a little nugget in my head of, you should turn this into a podcast. So
Yeah.
I did. Realized how much I love talking to other people about their businesses, and my book mentor said to me, I think you'll be a business coach within 5 years. And I was like, oh no, don't be silly. But it planted a seed.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, I've signed up. Yeah, and in the meanwhile, so Sally Giblin, my co-founder at Be the Future, had spotted my business name Unlikely Genius on a hashtag and thought, I'm intrigued, looked up my name on this hashtag we were both on, and realized that I had the skills that she wanted in a project idea that she had. So she emailed me, said, was I up for it? And 18 months later, yeah, the business is born. We have loads of ideas. We're still very much in the development phase, but we've got so many grand ideas, and we've got our first book in development and our first game, and it's really, really exciting. We absolutely
It's
love
pretty
the
cool.
project. But
Unlikely Genius. When it comes to learning, what do you have to give us as strategies? Give us the top three learning strategies that you have as a human to get information in your brain and retain it.
yeah, well, I'm all about the fun. Make things enjoyable. This whole culture of click reveal and e-learning is so old and done, and it shows you don't care about your learner. So it's not just about fun, it's just about being at their level and understanding them and what's going to make them tick. So you've really got to look at your audience and how to speak to them, what kind of atmosphere they're going to be learning under. So not everyone's sat at a desk for an hour doing this course. They might be doing it with kids climbing on them. They might be doing it on the train on the way to work. You've got to really look at that. So leading on from that as well, make it bite-sized, make it really digestible, so that they can scroll through, that they can pick up where they left off, and they can really just engage in different ways. And for me, a big thing is about tone of voice. So many people get it wrong. They go in with too much jargon, they make it too simple, they make it really robotic, when actually, the big thing from the book that everybody feeds back to me is about how they love that it's conversational and it makes it relatable, and so they remember it. And that to me is something that needs to be brought into learning. The days of standing just teaching by rote in front of a classroom should not be the case anymore. It should be engaging and immersive and all those other things that become the key words, but they have a point, and you've got to really help learners as much as you can. And still there is too much of a culture of not doing, and it breaks my soul.
And as an entrepreneur, I mean, we read books, we listen to podcasts, YouTube videos. We have strategies to synthesize learning better?
Well, personally, for me, it's about it being visual. So I'm still, I know there's a lot of debate about the whole like visual and auditory learning and all of that, but I am someone that I need to write notes, I need to see things written on a page, I need to make diagrams. So I try to really think about how other people are going to do that as well, and represent things in different ways. So not just a wall of text. How can you break this down into a different method of content, whether it's an infographic, a table, a video, and then getting all the accessibility things in as well, because that's quite a thing that I do champion as well. Um, but yeah, to make it digestible, you've got to kind of present it in a way that lots of people can interpret it in the way they want to. Give people the freedom and the autonomy to go off and digest things themselves in their way and feedback within a group. So things like user generated content are brilliant for that, because you give a prompt of some sort and they go and find things in their way, whether it's a YouTube video or just do they want to read a scientific journal, do they want to do something else, and then come back and collaborate those ideas. And that's one of the best ways of digesting information, and I find it works for me and learners as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess take notes as well and take actions on these
Yeah.
learning pieces is a can be a good one. Which your podcasts for an entrepreneur that wants to start his own podcast? What top three tips do you have for them?
Well, I mean, mine, I've gone with, I call it the lazy approach, and it's not lazy. It's just that obviously with running three businesses, I don't have all the time in the world to edit it. So I've gone with, I embrace being myself, and that's a whole part of my business, that I am unfiltered, uncensored, and that kind of thing. So I've taken that approach with the podcast, and I have honest, real conversations. And unless someone says afterwards, actually, I wish I hadn't said that, can you take it out? Or there's a particular issue, a tech issue, I don't edit it at all. So it goes out as is, and they're warned about that in advance. And I would say that has also been something that again has been fed back, that people like it because they feel like they're listening to two friends having a conversation in a coffee shop, was the way that it was put to me. So it was, and I think because of the topics we talk about around mindset and things that we find stressful in freelance life and great things, it needs to be that level of being conversational stuff. So really just find the level that you need to pitch it at. I mean, I think that I do it too long, but it's because I love talking to them and I get carried away. I do think in the next series I need to cut it down to shorter episodes. Um, so that's another thing to think about, whether what time your listeners have to listen to it and what would be off-putting to them. Is an hour off-putting, or do they like being fully immersed like that and doing it that way? Um, and do the promotion better than I do. Actually have a strategy. I think is just a big thing. We've really found that with the Be the Future podcast, that we got people to support each episode this series, and it was a lot of work for Sally because she's the trooper that did it. But we got people to support it, and it helped get the word out among different networks, but also was reciprocal, and we were raising awareness of other businesses and things as well. So yeah, that was quite a nice little tip, that if anyone wants to kind of just get the word out a little bit more and get a bit more traction, get supporters for either the full series or each episode.
Yeah, and for the editing, oddly enough, I never did any of these kinds of edits. I find that people that want to cut out things, usually it's pretty pointless, and in the first place they shouldn't have been in the podcast if they want something edited out. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
weird, and because I'm huge in authenticity and transparency, but I
Yeah.
never got that after like 300 or even 500 episodes. So
Oh well.
that's kind of funny that that you mentioned that. And let's finish off like with Be the Future. Tell us a bit more about that one.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're trying to engage families to help them raise the eco leaders of the next generation and change our climate story. And, me and Sally are both fed up of the doom and gloom that a lot of people use to get educational stuff about the environment out there. It's all about, we're doomed and it's going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
So we're doing it in very much a way of, it's humor, it's storytelling, it's full of puns, it's got silly characters, it's bright colors, and all those things that appeal not just to the kids, but we're putting subtle things in for the parents as well, to both get them engaged out in nature, get them taking action, learning about the environment, and spending that quality family time together, and hopefully in the process helping to ease eco-anxiety and stuff, because that is rife with children at the moment. There are some that are really feeling it when they're seeing all this stuff on the news, they're seeing the floods, the bushfires, all those things. They're picking up on it, and obviously it's they've got questions, and we need to be able to at least answer or help them get through that in some way. So we just really want to do that with families, and yeah, we've got all sorts planned and in the works.
Very
So
cool. Well,
yeah.
this has been quite entertaining, but I had yeah, I had one last question. I kind of lied when I said this was my last, because I want to. I mean, I've created my own books myself, but you officially launch yours. So how painful was it to sit down and write a book, and was it worth it in the end?
100% worth it. It's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, I always wanted to be an author. I love books. You know, I'm sat in front of a wall full of them here. Um, Never thought it would be that book. Never thought it would be a business book at all, or a well-being one. But like I say, I got so much out of the process myself. It was really cathartic, and I actually loved the writing till it got to the editing, and then I had to do quite a bit of editing because it's so many short chapters, and you know there's a big structure behind it. To get that right, I really had to just take some time off contract work and immerse myself in that. Um, but I had a great team behind me of 2 designers for the book, my editor, my proofreader, my VA, all these people that were amazing. And I think if you get that support as well, and someone to really kind of G you on and put faith in you, you can do it. It does make it easier. Um, but just be aware that once the book's out there, it doesn't mean your job's finished. I never quite realised how much the promotion would take and all of that. But yeah, people also start to do that for you once they've read it. They start sharing it, and that's really nice. But the best thing is when you just get that message on LinkedIn or something from someone saying, you know, I've just had one this morning. I've started reading your book. It's so relatable. I love it. Thank you. That just makes my day to know that someone feels like they're not alone in
Yeah,
the whole journey of it.
it's so
Yeah.
cool. Where can people get that book?
So it's on Amazon, or you can head to my website, fallingofftheladder.com, and there is about 3 of the limited edition colour version left, if anyone did want to grab that one. But it's also on Waterstones and, you know, quite a lot of the major retailers. But yeah, you can always just head straight to my website,
Cool.
fallingofftheladder.com.
And what is your website? Where can people find out more about you?
So if they wanted the learning design, that is unlikelygenius.com. If they wanted the business coach in the book, fallingofftheladder.com. And for the environmental project, it's bethefuture.earth.
And thank you so much. This has been amazing. Hope you have a nice
Thank
day,
you.
and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.